Good evening, everyone. I hope my voice is clear. Hello? Hello? Yes, sir. Yeah, sir. Good evening. No, sir. I came to PG because I need to take batch. Uh, yeah, sir. Okay. Okay, sir. Okay. Means in PG, sir. Yes, sir. Online batch. Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Mm. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. BTM, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, that is the problem. Yeah, sir. Okay, sir. Bye, sir. So, good evening, everyone. So, we will start our session today. Let me share my screen. I hope my screen is visible. Please let me know in the chat box. Okay. Okay. So, before moving to the actual topic for the day, so let me ask some questions. We will discuss some questions. Okay. So, is it fine for everyone? Is it fine for everyone? Okay. Okay. So, the first question is, so is it mandatory that the file name and the class name should be same? Is it mandatory that file name and class name should be same? Should be same. Anyone knows? If anyone knows, please let me know. Someone is saying yes, and other people please try to respond. Is it mandatory that the file name and class name should be same? No. Okay. Someone have replied no. Okay. So we will try and execute. Okay. So what we will do, let me take notepad. Okay. Let me write program first. So import java.lang package. Okay. So class, let me give something like student. Okay, student, and let me have main method. So public static void main string args, and let me close the braces. So inside main method, I'm trying to print a single statement like system dot out dot println. So I will print something like this is student. Okay, this is student. Okay, so I wrote program. If you observe, the class name is student. Okay, let me save with different name. Okay, so I'm saving. So I'm saving inside my desktop. Okay, so here. So let me give some name. Like let me give other than the class name. So what name I will give? Something like main2. Okay, dot java. Okay, so I saved successfully. Okay, let me close this notepad and let me go to the location where my file is present. So where it is, if you observe here, this is main2.java. Here the java file is there. Okay, so let me go to the command prompt. So let me type here cmd. So the command prompt will be opened, and the path location is same as the java file location. So to compile, what is the command we need to do? Java c filename.java. So what is my file name? main2.java, right? So java c main2.java. Okay, so let me click on enter. Yeah, it is successfully compiled. As you guys observe here, the class, the bytecode dot class file name is student, and the class name is also student. Even though I am compiling with the main2.java, okay, with the file name main2, but the class is generated with the class name. The bytecode file is generated with the class name. Okay, so if I want to execute this class, okay, so before what we will be doing, for both compilation and for interpretation, we will be using file name, right? Because the file name and the class name is same, but here the class name and file name both are different. Okay, so whenever I compiled .java file, main2.java file, so what output I got student.class file, which is a bytecode. In order to execute this class file, so let me write interpretation command like java. Normally we used to do like main2, right? So let's check whether it will execute or not. See, if you see here, it is giving error. Let me try with student name. Okay, so java student. See, I got my output, right? So this is how it works. So we can give different name other than the file name in the class. Okay, it is not mandatory that the class name and the file name should be same. It is not mandatory. We can give different names also. But coming to the bytecode will be generated with class name only. If even though you are giving different file name for .java class, .java file, so the generated bytecode will be as per the class name. Okay, if we want to execute, if we want to interpret, we need to give the name which is class name. Okay, we need to give the class name only, because here the bytecode is student.class, right? So that is the reason, in order to execute this bytecode, we need to give dot class file name only, which is student. Is it clear for everyone? Is it clear? Let me know. Okay, so the font is not visible for everyone. Let me know. Is the font size is little? Okay, 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 Pallavi. Okay, I hope it is clear for everyone. And coming to the next question. Okay, coming to the next question. Can I have more than one class in one .java file? Okay, can I have more than one class? More than one class in one .java file? Can I have? Let me know if you guys know the answer. Can I have? Can I have? Yes, we can have. Okay, so we can have more than one class in one .java file. Okay, so let me try to execute. So let me go back and let me open the same file which is main2.java. So this is my main2.java. So let me write one more class, like class, some name we will give like mobile, and let me have main method. Okay, so let me try to print this is mobile. Okay, so we will try to execute this. Okay, so let me close this, let me save and let me close this. So let me remove this dot class file. Observe here, so I will try to execute. So the path is same as the .java file path. So what I need to do for compilation, java c file name. What is the file name? main2.java. Okay, so whenever I try to compile, it is successfully compiled. If you guys observe here, I am getting two class files, right? 2 byte code files. If you observe, first one is mobile, another one is student. Okay, so if we are having more than one class in one .java file, then we will get different dot class files for each and every class. Okay, we will get different dot class files for each and every class. Okay, so even though you are compiling the entire .java file, we will get separate dot class files. Okay, so if I want to execute this mobile dot class, what I need to do? Java, what is the class name? Mobile. Okay, so if I see here, I got output like this is mobile. Okay, if I want to execute student, so Java student. Okay, this is student. So this is how it works. I hope everyone is clear, right? So coming to the next question. So can I execute Java file without name, without giving name for .java file? Okay, can I execute a file, a .java file, a .java file without any file name? Can I do this? Please let me know if anyone knows. Can I execute without giving name, without giving file name? Can I execute Okay, so we will see practically. Okay, so let me go to the same file again. Okay, let me minimize all these things. Sorry guys. So let me delete these files first. Okay, so I try to rename this. So now what I will do, I won't give any file name, only .java. Okay, so I am saving it. Okay, so if I open, in this I am having some code. I am having two class files. One is student, another one is mobile. Okay, so we will try to execute. So let me go to the command prompt. So the location is same as the .java file location. Now to compile, what I need to do, javac file name .java, but there is no file name, right? So we won't give file name, that's it. So javac, there is no file name .java. Okay, see, it is successfully compiled. If you guys observe here, I got class files too. Okay, if I am having bytecode files, we know how to execute, right? How we will execute? Java mobile. If I want to execute mobile class, Java mobile. So I will get mobile output. And if I want to execute student, Java student. I will get student output. Okay, is it fine? So is it clear for everyone? Please let me know. Please let me know. Okay, so we will move to the actual concept now. So today we will start with variables. Okay, so what is variable? What is variable? Okay, I know so many people know, so let me brief about it. So what is variable? Variable is nothing but it is a container. It is a container, or in other words we can say it has a placeholder, or we can say it has a memory location. A memory location. Okay, okay, so which is used to store some data, which is used to store some data. Okay, so what is variable? Variable is nothing but a container, or we can say it as a placeholder, or we can say it as a memory location which is used to store some data. Okay, so in any programming language, coming to the Java programming language, if we want to store some data internally, what Java will do means Java will create a container, or it will occupy some memory location first. Okay, and later inside that container or inside that memory location it will try to store the data. Okay, so this is how variable works. So in first of all, if we want to store any data, what it will do, the Java internally in the memory it will occupy some memory location, or we can say it will create one container and it tries to store that data. Okay, so this is variable. Okay, so now we will see variable declaration, how to declare a variable and how to initialize a variable. So first one, variable declaration. Okay, variable declaration. How we can declare a variable? So let me write the syntax. So syntax for declaration of variable is, so data type and followed by variable name. Okay, data type followed by variable name and semicolon. This is called as variable declaration. Okay, variable name can be anything. Okay, variable name is nothing but identifier. Okay, so this data type specifies what type of data that this variable need to store. Okay, what data type specifies here? data type specifies that what type of data that this variable need to store. Okay, so this is the syntax for variable declaration. Okay, so let me give some examples like so int a. Okay, this is one declaration. Float value, this is also one declaration. Okay, so long, okay, this is declaration. This a, value, lawn, all these are variable names. Variable names are nothing but identifiers, right? So this data types, this primitive data types specifies what type of data that this variable need to store. Okay, so this is how we will be doing variable declaration. Okay, so coming to the next, which is variable initialization. Variable initialization. Okay, what is this variable initialization? Initialization is nothing but assigning the value to the variable. What is initialization? Assigning the values, or we can say data, okay, data to the variable, okay. So what is initialization? Initialization is nothing but assigning the values or data to the variable is called as initialization. Okay, so coming to the syntax, so the variable name, and we will be using equals to operator, and we will provide here value or data. Okay, so coming to examples, so here if you see above, we have declared, right? We will try to initialize this. So like a is equals to some 10. Okay, so value equals to some 10.0 f. Okay, so the one thing is, whenever you are using float and long primitive data types, if it is a float data type, don't, so this f, you should include f in the value. Okay, don't forget this. Okay, because sometimes it will give error. So in float, whenever you are using primitive data types like float and long, okay, so for float you need to add some suffix, okay, like f, and for long we need to add some suffix like l. Okay, so long is equals to long, right? So 120 l. Okay, so this is how we will do initialization. Okay, is it fine for everyone? Is it clear how to do declaration and initialization? I hope it is clear for everyone. So the variable, until now what we saw, what is variable, how to do variable declaration, and how to initialize values for that variables. Okay, so the next thing is reinitialization. So what is this reinitialization? Okay, so reinitialization is nothing but initializing a variable, initializing a variable, initializing a variable which is already initialized, which is already initialized, is called as reinitialization. Okay, so what we need to do, what is reinitialization? Initializing a variable which is already initialized is known as reinitialization. Okay, so coming to the example, so let me have something like int value is equals to 10. Okay, now I don't want 10, I don't want to store 10 inside this value variable. Okay, I want to store 20. Then we can reinitialize that variable. Okay, value is equals to 20. So whenever if we try to print value like system out, value, if we try to print, we will get the latest value which is initialized. Like here the latest value which we initialized is 20. So we will get 20 as an output. So can we do in reinitialization for variables? Yes, it is possible in Java. We can do reinitialization for the variables. Okay, so I hope everyone is clear. And the next thing is reinitialization is possible, but redeclaration is not possible. Okay, reinitialization is possible, but redeclaration is not possible. If we try to redeclare, we will get error. Okay, so note. So redeclaration is not possible. Declaration is not possible. So it will show error. Okay, so let me try. So let me open my Eclipse. Okay, so first int value is equals to 10. I have declared with int data type and I stored 10 value. So let me try to redeclare. Like again I am using int value is equals to 20. Okay, if you see here I am getting error. Right, what is the error? Duplicate local variable. Okay, so this is not possible. Okay, so let me give like float also. See, duplicate local variable. What we are doing here, for same variable name, we are trying to declare with two different data types. Right? So that is the reason it is showing error. Redeclaration of a variable cannot be possible. Reinitialization is possible. Okay, so if I try to reinitialize and if I try to print, I will get. So if I try to print value, so I need to get 20 as an output. See, I got 20 as an output. Right? So this is how it works. Redeclaration is not possible and reinitialization is possible. Okay. So now we will discuss types of variables. Okay, so types of variables. Okay, so these variables are categorized based on two criteria. The first criteria is based on data type. Based on data type. Okay, based on data type, by using which data type we have declared. Based on that, and coming to the second criteria, based on scope, means the place where we declare. Okay, so what is data type? The type of data we declared a variable. So let me write. So what is data type? So what is data type? Said that what data type we used to declare. Okay, so this is one criteria. Coming to the scope, what is scope? Scope is nothing but where we declared, the place where we declared. Okay, so based on these two criteria, the variables are divided into further. Okay, so what are those? First one is based on data type. Okay, based on data type. First one is primitive data type. Primitive variable. Primitive variable. Okay, and second one is non-primitive variable. Okay, these are based on data type. Okay, based on what type of data we declared, the variables are divided into two types. One is primitive variable and non-primitive variable. Okay, so what is this primitive variable, non-primitive variable means? So if we try to declare a variable with primitive data types like int, short, byte, long. We are having some 8 data types, right? If we try to declare a variable with that primitive data type, then we can say that has primitive variables. Okay, so like int value is equals to 10. So if you observe here, int is a primitive data type and we are declaring this variable with the help of this primitive data type, which is integer, right? So this variable is called as primitive variable. Okay, so the same like double value 2 is equals to some 12.34. Okay, so this is also primitive variable because we have declared variable with primitive data type. Okay, in the same way like boolean. Okay, so answer is equals to true. Okay, this is also primitive variable. Okay, so coming to the non-primitive variable. Okay, so if we declare any variable with the help of class name, okay, with the help of interface name or any enum type, then we can say that type of variables are non-primitive variables. Okay, so let me give an example. So till we have not went through interface enum, so let me give a short example with the help of this class. Okay, so most of you guys may know how to create object. So there what we will do, this is the syntax for creating an object. Demo reference, this is the reference variable, and new demo. Okay, so if you observe here, I am using class name, okay, has a non-primitive data type. The class name is nothing but non-primitive data type. So I am using class name to declare this variable. Okay, so that is the reason this is called as non-primitive variable. Okay, because I am using the class name to declare this particular variable. So that is the reason this variable is called as non-primitive variable. So non-primitive variables always stores the address of the object. What it will store? It will store the address of the object. Coming to the primitive data types. Okay, so coming to the primitive data types, it will always tries to store only the datas or numeric values or the datas like characters that it will store. Coming to these variables which are declared with the class name, interface name, they will store the addresses. Okay, so that is the reason this non-primitive variables are called as reference variables, and coming to the primitive variables, these are called as normal variables. Okay, so the reference variables will store the address, normal variables will store the values. Okay, so primitive variables. So what is primitive variable? What is primitive variable? So if we declare a variable with primitive data types, then that type of variables we will be calling it as primitive variables. Okay, and these primitive variables will store data or values, will store datas or values like characters, numerics, comma characters. Okay, so like this the values it will store, true or false. Okay, so coming to the non-primitive variable. So what is non-primitive variable? If we declare any variable with class name, okay, or interface name, okay, or array name, okay, like this we are having so many. Okay, so if we use user defined data types for declaring the variables, then those are called as non-primitive variables. What these non-primitive variables will store? It stores addresses of the object. It stores the address of the object. Okay, so these non-primitive variables are also called as reference variables. Reference variables. Okay, so I hope it is clear for everyone. So what is primitive variable and non-primitive variable? So let me write under this. Okay, so the next one is based on the scope. Scope is nothing but the place where they declared. Okay, so these are again divided into two types. Okay, so the first one is so local variable, and the second one is member variable. Member variable. Okay, so what is this local variable? What is this member variable? The variable which is declared inside the main method is known as local variable. Okay, so a variable a variable declared and initialized inside main method is called as local variables. Okay, so let me show. So this is the main method. If you see here, this is the main method, right? So if we declare any variables inside this main method, then these variables are called as local variables. Okay, so this is called as local variables. If we create object also, so like we have created object also, right? Like some reference is equals to new demo. This is also local variable because we are declaring and initializing this variable within this method, within the main method, right? So that is the reason these are called as local variables. Okay, so whatever the variables we declare within the method, okay, those variables are called as local variables. Okay, so not only the main method, inside any method. Okay, so if we write any method like public void display. Okay, so if I try to declare here anything, float value is equals to 20.0f. Okay, if I try to declare here, so this variable is within this method, right? So this is local variable for this particular method. Okay, the one more thing is the local variables exist only in the method. We can access only within the method. So if this variable is declared within this method, then we can access this variable only within the method. We cannot access out of the method. Okay, in the same way, inside main method also, whatever the things we declared inside the method, that can be accessible inside that method only. We cannot access outside the method. Okay, so what is local variable? A variable declared and initialized inside the method. So inside any method is called as local variable, and that local variables can be accessible only within that method. Okay, so we can access only within that method. We cannot access outside that method. We cannot do that. Okay, because the local variables get destroyed once the total method execution was completed. Okay, so the local variables will destroy Okay, once the method is called and executed. Okay, so the local variables will destroy once the method is executed. Okay, that is the reason local variables are not accessible outside that method. Okay, and one more thing is, if we want to use local variables, so we need to initialize it. Okay, so if we want to use local variables variables, we need to access, so we need to initialize, we need to initialize. Okay, without initialization we cannot access the local variable. Let me show. Okay, so let me delete this method. So if you observe here, I wrote this variable which is a local variable for this particular method. I can access only within this method, right? So what I said, so if we want to use local variables, we need to initialize it. Okay, so think that I have not initialized it. And I am trying to access. Okay, so let me print value. Okay, if you guys observe here, I am getting error, right? So what is that error? So let me see. The local variable val may not have been initialized. It is not initialized. Okay, so if we want to use local variables, it is mandatory to initialize. Without initialization, we cannot use the local variables. Okay, so it is mandatory to initialize something. So now if you guys observe, there is no error, and if I run, I will get the output. Okay, so this is what happens. And the next thing is, the next variable type is member variable. So the member variables are declared and initialized within the class but outside the main method. This is the main method, right? So they are declared and initialized inside the class but outside the main method, like int value is equals to 10. Okay, so these members which we declared, these variables which we declared inside the class and outside the main method, these variables are called as member variables. Okay, this is called as member variables. So what is member variable? So the variables which we declare and initialize within the class and outside the method is called as member variables. Okay, and one more thing, if we if means before I said, right, the local variables cannot be accessed without initialization, but the member variables are not like that. So without initialization also, without initialization we can access member variables. Okay, member variables, we can access member variables. Let me show. Okay, so let me remove this initialization and let me try to print here, and let me print value here. So let me save, let me try to execute. So some error I'm getting, so sorry. So I have not defined them. So why I need to use this, I will say. For now, just observe this. me make it as a static. Why static, I will say. So let me execute. See, I got 0, right? So this is the member variable. Okay, so I can access it without initialization also. Okay, because this member variables will have default initialization. Okay, what they will be having? They will be having something called as default initialization. Okay, so the member variables will be having default initialization. So they have default initialization. So what is this default initialization means? It is also a type of initialization which is done by constructor. This you will learn when you are learning constructor, okay, in further classes. But for now, just remember that member variables can be accessed without initialization also, because internally default initialization is done by the constructor to that variables. Okay, so if it is the data type is byte or short or long, okay, or int, if the data type of variable is this, then the default initialization will be 0. Okay, so if it is a float, okay, or double, okay, then the default initialization which is done by the constructor is 0.0. Okay, and coming to the char, it will store some space. Okay, okay, so coming to the boolean, it will by default store false. Okay, so these are the default initializations which are happened by the constructor for the member variables. Okay, so let me show other example too. So let me write like static float value to. Okay, I'm not initializing anything. So here I will try to print value 2. Okay, see. See, if you observe here, I'm getting 0.0. Like this, based on the data type, the constructor, okay, that there is one constructor called default constructor. That default constructor will initialize the values. Okay, so and one more thing is the member variables are of two types. Okay, so while discussing about states and behaviors, okay, while discussing about the structure of the class, I said there are properties like states and behaviors. I said that states and behaviors are of two types called as static and non-static, right? So in that states only, if you observe, local variables are also states, right? So if I declare any variable here, okay, int number is equals to 10, this is also state which stores some data. This is also a state which stores some data. But local variables are not defined as static and non-static. Okay, they are not defined as static and non-static. They are not defined. But coming to the member variables, they are defined as static and non-static. In states also, the local variables are not defined as static and non-static. Only the member variables are defined as static and non-static. Okay, so if it is a static, we will access with the class name. Otherwise, we will create object and we will try to access it. Okay, so that is the reason I added here static, because the member variables are of two types, which is static and non-static. This static and non-static are not associated with the local variables. We cannot assign this with local variables. Okay, so the member variables are of two types. One is static and non-static. Okay. So this is about member variables and local variables. So local variables will be created inside the method and they are accessible only within that method. And coming to the member variables, we can access anywhere. Okay, we can access anywhere. Okay, but the accessing will be different based on whether it is a static member variable or non-static member variable. If we define it as a static member variable, then we can access with the help of class name. If it is a non-static member variable, we can access it with by creating the object. Okay, so this is the difference between member variable and local variable. So I hope it is clear the types of variables. So let me know in the chat box whether it is clear or not. Okay, so now we will see constants. Okay, constants are final variables. We can say it as final variables also. Okay, so what is this constant or final variable means? So any variable, okay, if a variable cannot change its value, then we can say it as a constant variable. Okay, so if a variable cannot change its value, then we will be calling that type of variable as a constant or final variable because it is not able to change its value. It cannot be modified. Okay, so how we will declare constants means by using one keyword which is final. Okay, so final keyword is used to define a variable as constant. Okay, so if I want to make any variable as a constant, then we need to use final keyword. We need to add final keyword declaration. Okay, then that variable will become constant. It cannot be changed its value. Okay, so let me show. So let me remove this. Okay, so normally we will create variables like this, right? So if I want to make this constant, that it should not change its value, we know that, right? We can reinitialize the variables, right? But it should not take the reinitialized value. It should not be reinitialized. Then I need to make that variable as a constant, right? So what I will do, I will add prefix final keyword. Then this will become constant. It will not change its value if we try also. Okay, so let me try. So now what I will do, I will try to reinitialize to 20. Okay, so if you observe here, I am getting error. What is the error? The final local variable value cannot be assigned. It must be blank and not using a compound assignment. Okay, means it is saying that we cannot reinitialize the final type variables because we have used final keyword, right? So this variable became constant. One value already stored. So it cannot reinitialize this value. Okay, reinitialization is not possible. Modification is not possible for the constants. If we want to make a variable as constant, we need to use final keyword. We need to go with final keyword. Okay, so reinitialization is not possible for constants. Let me write that. So reinitialization is not possible. Okay, this is what it can, the final variables can be initialized only once. Okay, so now you may have question like, so can I make member variables as final, right? You may have doubt. Yes, we can make. Okay, so let me have member variable like int value, so is equals to 10. Let me make it as static. So because till now we don't know how to create object, I didn't show, right? So let me use static, so we can access with class name static. And yes, I'm using final. Okay, so yes, I can have final member variable. Now this is called as final member variable. Okay, so let me try to access. So like value, so with the help of class name, otherwise it will show error. Okay, so let me save and let me execute. So I'm getting 10 as output, right? So this is how we can make member variables also final. We cannot reinitialize. Let me try to reinitialize. Value is equals to 20. See, I'm getting error like, so the final field demo dot value cannot be assigned, cannot be reinitialized, we cannot modify. Okay, so the one more thing is, I said right, member variables will be having default initialization, right? Let me check. So now I have not initialized anything. I am deleting this also. So I have not initialized. If you observe here, I am getting some error. But in the before case, what I said, member variables can be initialized by the default constructor. The default values will be initialized by the default constructor, right? So if I remove this final keyword, so it is not showing error. If I try to print this, what value I will get? 0. As it is a integer, it will be initialized with a default value called 0. So I will get 0. So what I am doing, I am just adding final. Now it is showing error, right? So what is the error? First we will see. The blank final field value may not have been initialized. It is showing that it is not initialized. Okay, so the concept here what you need to learn is, if we try to make member variables as final, then for that final member variables default initialization is not possible. Okay, so if we make member variables as final, okay, so that final member variables cannot have default initialization. Okay, so if we want to do initialization, we need to do either directly, or if the type of variable is static, we will be using static blocks. If it is non-static, we will be using constructor. Okay, so that all things you will learn later. For now, just remember that if the member variable is final, default initialization will not happen. Okay, so for member final variables, the default initialization is not possible. So we can make member variables as final. Okay, but the problem is but the problem is default initialization will not happen. Default initialization is not possible because it is a final member variable. Okay, I hope it is clear for everyone. Let me know. Is it clear? Please try to reply in the chat box. Is it clear? No doubts.